Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. In this hour, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to talk much. We will be showing you a DVD, a recording of the American Free Press Conference that took place back in September 2006 in Washington, D.C., which I attended. We will be showing you my speech and Rabbi Dovid Weiss of the Natori Karta Jewish organization, which is a Jewish organization that is opposed to Zionism. They believe that Zionism has used the religion, the Jewish religion, for its own political purposes, and they opposed it. So he did speak after me. And at the end there, we will also have a few minutes of Mark Glenn's speech, which was in response to what the rabbi said. It's exciting, and I think you probably need to stay around to see the DVD in its entirety, because it's very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of information. The rabbi spoke, and he had given a lot of good information. Some of the Jewish people out there, they don't look at Israel the way you think all Jews look at Israel, because some people, they do think that Israel is not supposed to be a Jewish state. Even Jews, they think that there should not be a Jewish state. So I believe we are ready. We're going to go to the DVD, and we're probably not going to be able. We'll come back right before the end, and so let's go to the DVD.
Thank you. I haven't been a moderator for a long time. Most people don't think I'm actually all that moderate, but I'll do the best I can here. Since the first shot was fired at that little bridge in Concord, our nation has not faced a greater crisis than the one which confronts it now. This regime here down the block in our town has sullied our national honor, said it needs the right to torture people who have been arrested and not charged, now up to 4 years in prison without a charge, destroyed our economy, decimated our military, including the National Guard and the Reserve, and abolished our constitutional rights. You can hardly imagine what damage they would have done if they'd actually been elected. At this time, the time that tries men's souls, we are blessed to have with us those who've arranged this historic conference, and those of you who have come here in spite of the fact that we were told there was a hurricane coming, and nothing kept you away. More than 300 people came here, many, many more than anyone expected, and only 9 people were unable to come here because of illness or because of the hurricane, which prevented their planes from taking off. And I think we especially have to thank and want to thank Willis Carto and his devoted, intelligent, innovative group of members and supporters who pulled this all together. You know, many people thought that I met Willis about 3 decades ago when we were involved in beating E. Howard Hunt, beating the Central Intelligence Agency, beating William Buckley, and beating Mel Mermelstein in a series of legal victories. But actually, Willis and I, this is a confession. That was Willis. He's gone. He doesn't want to hear about it. He doesn't want to confess. He's leaving. He said he's back. Willis and I were members of the same organization 60 years ago. It's called the United States Army, and it was during World War II. We heard the call of our country, and we answered it. At the present time, we have a president calling upon us to show the same vigor and support for his crusade in the Middle East, stating that it's a present confrontation, just like the confrontation of the last generations against communism. I think he's referring to not only World War II, but the war in Vietnam. And where was President Bush during the war in Vietnam? His daddy got him into the Texas National Guard, from which he was AWOL. He did pass a test, and he got a license to fly a plane, but when the time came for a medical examination, which would determine whether or not he was on drugs, he declined and lost his license. This is a man now sending our kids off to fight and die in a foreign country because of his concept of what a crusade is. And we hear about Iran a lot now. We hear him tell us that we don't want a madman to have his finger on the nuclear bomb. Well, we have one already, and he's right here in town. We have a most remarkable panel here today. I'm not going to speak. I know it's a long conference, and I haven't been here very long, but you guys have been here from the beginning, and I salute you for that. We're going to start with I just want to tell you who's on this panel, just briefly, just in designated titles. We have Christians, Jews, and Muslims on this panel. Who says we can't get along? We have Iranians, Americans, Palestinians, and Lebanese on this panel. Who says we can't get along? Well, unfortunately, yesterday, I wasn't here for it, but I heard that yesterday some speaker here made some unkind, unfortunate, untrue, entirely inaccurate remarks about our brothers and sisters who are Muslims. And I'm calling upon Mark Glenn, who is an American of Lebanese descent, an author of books about the Middle East and Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, who's just going to briefly respond to those remarks on behalf of every member of this panel. Mark.
Wow. American Free Press. Somebody would have told me a year ago or even 2 months ago that I would be standing here in front of a group of people like this. I would never believe it. And so I'd like to start off by thanking Willis Cardo and especially my good friend Michael Collins Piper for making this possible. And I will be very brief about this. The general consensus is here that the remarks that were made yesterday, particularly about the Muslims and the religion of Islam in general, we completely reject these things. We don't want to cast any aspersions upon Mr. Sobran, but unfortunately he was getting his information from bad sources. As a Christian, I can say that I have spent quite a bit of time reading the Quran and studying Islam. Indeed, I can proudly say that my closest friend and the man whom I most admire standing next to me is a Muslim. And so, for myself, I would like to say that we apologize to our Muslim brothers and sisters out there for the comments that were made yesterday. And personally, I say 3 cheers for Islam. As a Christian, I get on my knees every day and thank God for the fact that there are these people known as Muslims, because right now, as a group, as a culture, they are the only ones standing up against the beast. And with that, I am going to introduce my very good friend, Hesham Tillawi of Current Issues TV. He has a weekly television show that airs out of Lafayette, Louisiana. It is a dynamite program. You owe it to yourselves and to everyone you know to tune in and listen to what our good friend has to say. Thank you.
You know, I'm really amazed that you guys are still up. I thought we will be speaking to probably about 15, 20 of you, but I'm really amazed that all of you still here. I want to start by thanking the American Free Press, especially Mr. Carto. And I want to welcome the American insurgency movement here.
It is really great to see people who want to take the country back. And I was hoping to see more young people here, but hopefully in the coming years we will see a lot more younger people, because there is a reason why they're not here with us, because they are being programmed, and they are being every time they turn around, they are programming them to basically, don't worry about the country, it's in good hands, you just go ahead, have fun, and do whatever you got to do. The war in Lebanon, I guess it's over. I don't know if it's over or not, but everybody, the Israeli ambassador started saying this is World War III, and then his good friend John Hagee, which I'm sure probably most of you know who he is, he's a Christian Zionist, or they call him the Christian right, I call him the Christian wrong. And they thought, they started packing up, and they were thinking, I don't want to offend anyone here if you believe in rapturing, but they started packing their packs, and they thought that World War III was coming, because our Congress was basically singing the same song as the Israelis, that the end of time was almost here. This is World War III. We're going to see nukes going all over the place, and a lot of people believed it. Even Jesus came down halfway and had to go back when France and the United States reached a ceasefire agreement. France and the United States? I thought it was Lebanon and Israel fighting. I thought Israel attacked. But no, they said France and the United States reached a ceasefire agreement. There's a little story that I like to tell you that you did not hear about this ceasefire. Of course, at first the Israelis were saying no to ceasefire, and then all of a sudden they said yes to ceasefire. Well, there's a little story behind that. And of course, they also accepted the 7 points that the Lebanese Prime Minister said it needed to be in the agreement in the UN Security Council Resolution 1701. About 100 Israeli soldiers went into a Lebanese army compound, and they took over it. They said, we're looking for Hezbollah fighters and Hezbollah weapons. Of course, there was no Hezbollah fighters or Hezbollah weapons. And they were leaving. While they were leaving, actually, Hezbollah was waiting for them outside, and a fight broke out, and the Israelis had to retreat to the army compound. Well, there were two choices for the Israelis at that time: either die, 100 of them at one time, or be captured or kidnapped. It depends on how you like to think about that. And because Lebanese kidnapped Israeli soldiers. How do you kidnap a soldier? You capture a soldier, But anyhow, there was a choice: either be taken prisoners or be killed. Just imagine if the news came out that 100 Israeli soldiers were captured by the Lebanese Hezbollah. Wow, that would have been a disaster for everybody. So they decided yes to the ceasefire. We want the ceasefire, and actually they asked for the ceasefire. Well, a couple of days after the war started, actually, Hassan Nasrallah called Omrit, and he said, look, we're going to beat the crap out of you. And he said, Omrit said, well, what do you have? He said, well, I got, how many men you have? I said, well, Hassan Nasrallah said, I have me, my cousin Mustafa, my neighbor Muhammad, and he goes, that's all? He said, yeah. He said, well, how many you have? He said, well, I have a 1,000,000-man army here. Hassan Nasrallah said, oh, we need an immediate ceasefire here. Omar said, why? I thought you were going to beat the crap out of me. He said, well, yeah, but we can't afford to feed 1 million prisoners here. So anyhow, see, in the Middle East, we like to do things opposite from the West. You write from left to right, we write from right to left. We even happen to read from right to left, too. But we like to call things different than you do. Like, when we capture, we say kidnapped. Well, the news media here thinks that maybe we understand kidnap better. The Israeli army arrests Palestinians. And to you, when you hear the word arrest, you think, they must have done something wrong. You don't say, now, arrest, what jurisdiction does Israel have over the Palestinians? It's an occupied area. You cannot arrest, you are kidnapping Palestinians. See, I'm here to teach you English. Okay? Just remember those two words, arrest and kidnap, and you will pass every test you're going to come across on that TV. Anytime they say Israelis arrested, just say, kidnapped. Anytime they say Palestine, and all, you know what? We only have one soldier. On a tank, he was the gunner. On a tank, we got one soldier, and they have 10,000 of Palestinians that they kidnapped. They went at 2 o'clock in the morning to these people's houses. They sent killer dogs, dragged the person out of his bedroom. And by the way, Palestinians, we don't have the big, huge villas and the big houses. Normally in a bedroom you might have about 8 or 9 children sleeping with their mom and dad. So imagine 2 or 3 killer dogs going, and this is, I am not exaggerating, ladies and gentlemen, this goes on in Palestine. They send these killer dogs, it drags people out because they are too cowards to go inside. And they kidnap these people, and people until now for years and years and years, people don't even know what they are in jail for. That's what's going on in Palestine. That's what the world does not see. And then they say, suicide bombers. I wanted to register for suicide bombers, but when I got there, they said there were no more virgins left. So I said, I'm out of here. You hear these things, and right away, I bet you right away, how many suicide bombers has been since the start of the Intifada, since 2000 until now? But everybody in the world knows about suicide bombers. Everybody knows. You think in your own mind that Palestinians, they're just, all they want to do is, I want to grow up and be a suicide bomber, Let me tell you just a little story about a suicide bomber. And by the way, there were women suicide bombers. And this young woman, she was a lawyer, and what she has done, what the Israelis have done, her brother was getting married, so she goes to Jordan trying to get some stuff for the wedding. In the meantime, she gets a phone call saying that the Israelis killed, you need to come back, it's not going to be a wedding because the Israelis killed your brother and your fiancé. She goes directly from Jordan to the morgue, and she sees her fiancé and her brother in the morgue. After that, she did not speak for a whole week. And then she woke up one morning. This is her mother's story. She said that she woke up one morning, took a shower, and was ready to go to work. In the evening, the news came out that she was a suicide bomber in Jerusalem. And you look at these suicide bombers and you think, these people are so vicious. The Palestinian people are so vicious. The Palestinian people live within walls. The pogroms of Europe is in Palestine now. The Israeli apartheid wall is in Palestine right now. Around every city, I went there and I have done a documentary on this. The whole city will be surrounded by a wall with only one gate. And you need a permission. You have to have a reason to why are you going in and out of that city. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you live under those circumstances. The Palestinian employees, even government employees, have not received their wages in like 3 months. People are living without work. They have closed in the Palestinian territories completely. People are starving in Palestine. People are dying in Palestine. Kofi Annan he went there last week and he demanded that the Palestinians release the Israeli soldier. But he didn't tell the Israelis, what about these 10,000 Palestinians that you have? When he got there, the Israelis killed 5 Palestinians. The next day when he was leaving, they killed 14 Palestinians. He didn't ask them. But he has the audacity to go to Iran and tell them that the Holocaust was an undeniable fact. What about the Holocaust that you witnessed when you were in Palestine? That is not a Holocaust? We did not have the news media and the internet that we have now back during World War II to see what was going on. That's why they were able to lie to us about what happened in World War II and destroy a whole heritage. What was Germany before World War II? What is it for Germany now? Just a Holocaust? Is that the history of Germany? Just a Holocaust? Is that the whole thing that happened? What about the scientists? What about the philosophers? Where did all these people go? And he had the audacity to go and say the Holocaust is an undeniable fact. Well, now we have the internet. We are witnessing a Holocaust happening in front of our eyes, and we're not doing anything about it. What about this Holocaust? That you can't tell me. This I can tell you how many were killed by the Israelis. I can number them. They have names. When an Israeli died, they go and visit his family. Kofi Annan went and visited the families of those soldiers who are held by the Palestinians and by Hezbollah. Did he go to visit any of the Palestinians, the 10,000 Palestinians who are held by the Israelis? No, he did not. But he did go and visit the Israeli families. Why? Why are we witnessing this and we're not doing anything about it? What can we do about it? Nothing. Because we live in America. I'm a Palestinian American. I came from a country that is occupied by Israel to the land of the free and the brave. Turned out to be occupied by Israel too. You know what? We are in a much better shape over there. At least we know the enemy. We can see him. We know how he looks like. We know how the gun he has looks like. But you have no clue how the enemy here looks like. See, we know him. He shoots at us. And he has the Star of David. So we know who he is. But you don't know. I'm going to, I have a lot, oh, someone calling me, great. They're probably telling me, okay, you want too much. Okay, I'm going to close by telling you a little story. And this story, after that, I'm going to introduce my friend Dovid Weiss here. But he has really a lot to do with this story. In the early 90s, you see, when you grow up, you know who the enemy is. So you have like a hatred for Jews, you know. I mean, who would have a hatred for Jews now? Come on. But I did. I really did. And one day I was coming back from Tel Aviv. We stopped in Amsterdam, and when I got, there was like 2 hours wait time. So I get out and I'm sitting there by the gate, and there was this guy that looks like David Weiss. Now, I'm not used to really seeing Jews with these black robes and hats. And now the guy didn't have his hat on, but he did have the hair, and I was sitting there like, I hated him. I really did. I hated him. And it's like, you know, if hate kills, that guy would have been dead. And I'm sitting there like, going through my mind, like, look at you with them clothes on, and look how you look, and all this stuff. Believe it or not, this guy that I hated, he turned out to be sitting right next to me on the plane. I was like, oh God, how could it be? I mean, where's the lottery? So I said, okay. So I went, I sat down, and you know, you have to share that arm rest. But I tell you what, it's like I sat down and, yeah, let me see you talk now. You know, I want you to, you know, it's like, he didn't say anything. He was very nice. He was short. I mean, he was like probably about 4 feet. He wasn't, well, anyhow, and then he talked. Now, at that time, I mean, we still were like in the plane. And then he started the conversation with me. He asked me where I was from. And I said, Palestine. I thought he would say, oh, you mean Israel? Because a lot of times, you know, you say Palestine, they say, oh, you mean Israel? But he said, oh, really? Great. And he started talking about Israel. And I'm looking at him like, what's wrong with you? You're a Jew. You can't be talking about Israel in a bad way, in a negative way. I mean, he was going, it's not supposed to be there. Israel is against Judaism. And I'm looking, are you going to a custom party or something? Because you're, you know, you're not supposed to be talking like that. But you know what? That was an education. Now, I did really say that I hated Jews. But this guy really taught me something. That don't hate a group of people, period. Hate those that you know specific, that they did something and pinpoint it and say, you did this. But don't hate all Jews, all Muslims, all Christians. It's ignorant. I was ignorant at one time, and that little rabbi have taught me a lot. And since then, I have met Dovid Weiss a few years back. He's been on my show a couple of times, and it's like, you know what? There are Jews out there who are against Israel, that we really need to talk to them. But I really have a problem with Jews in general, because a lot of Jews, they'll say, well, no, we don't agree with what Israel is doing. Then talk. Do something. If you don't agree with what Israel is doing, do something. But when I see the statistics that 85 or 90% of Jews in the United States are for Israel, then I say, you know what? I really can't help it, but I have to generalize and say Jews whenever I talk. Now, I don't mean all Jews, but I cannot say, because they have hijacked the religion. And when I say Jews, it's the idea of Jews, because we have some Christian Zionists who think they're Jews. Anyhow, I know I went over my time. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And at this time, I would like to introduce my friend Dovid Weiss.
God's help. I pray to God that He should bestow upon me His wisdom and His knowledge, and to enable me to convey His truth, the truth of the Torah, to this august gathering. And in so doing, we should be able to educate, with God's help, the world into the truth of the Torah, into God's truth, and we hope in so doing to be able to bring peace to this world. Amen. The time is very limited, and one of the prayers to God is that in this short time, I should be able to convey the main message that we would like to share with you. There is so much. We're talking about an issue that is so deep, that is so involved, and has caused so much suffering, and we have to sort of try to condense this in 15 minutes. We will try with God's help. There was a few issues. I wasn't here by this whole conference, and so unfortunately I wanted to come earlier. We had the Sabbath yesterday, and we can't travel on the Sabbath. I wasn't able to attend. I haven't heard all the issues that they were speaking about. I know that I've heard that the Holocaust was one of the issues that was, or maybe one of the main issues that was spoken about, and it's not really part of it's only a side issue of the message that we have to convey. But I will just read a few lines of something that would be very interesting in regard to this issue of the Holocaust. We as Jewish people, religious people throughout the world, have suffered by World War II. People of our families, my grandparents died in Auschwitz, and some people may not be happy to hear that. I don't know. They say that it wasn't altogether. It's a fact that in my family, my relatives, and as I said, my grandparents alone were killed, and so many other people that we know. I grew up with people, the older generation. I was born in 1956, and I grew up amongst people who were survivors from Hungarian and Polish descent. They all came to the United States. So they, as I say, many of them had tattoos in their hands with the numbers from where they were held. They each had the ones who survived, who were able to come to the United States, had a story of miracles, how they were able to come. My father escaped to Italy, and from there he came to the United States. And we have a day that when somebody passes away, we say Kaddish, we commemorate the day of the passing. All of our communities commemorated a certain 3-week period. It's unusual for everybody to commemorate commemorated at a certain time. People die different times of the year, but being that they were all killed at one time, so everybody commemorates at the same time of the year. Because we know at the time there were witnesses when they died. So it's not something which is used for a show or anything like that. In fact, we're all anti-Zionist, and we never considered to use this in order to manipulate or to intimidate other people. We never entered our minds. It's a simple fact of our life. If we believe everything is from God to remind us to be closer to Him, we have to be introspective and so forth. So that's the fact that we have. Now, I just wanted to mention Chaim Weizmann, who was the first president of the State of Israel, what his opinion was about the Jews being killed. I'm quoting from his writing. Palestine, this was in 1938, I believe, when they were speaking about the murder of Jews in Poland, which started earlier than Hungary. Hungary was in the last year, 1944, 1945. And this is when they had this meeting amongst the secret meetings amongst the Zionist leaders. They just were discussing if they should help the Jews, not help the Jews, what they should do, which Jews they should help. So this is what he said. I'm quoting, "Palestine cannot absorb the Jews of Europe. We want only the best of Jewish youth to come to us. We want only the educated to enter Palestine for the purpose of increasing its culture. The other Jews will have to stay where they are and face whatever fate awaits them. These millions of Jews are dust on the wheels of history and may have to be blown away. We don't want them pouring into Palestine. We don't want Tel Aviv to become another low-grade ghetto." This is the ones who are supposedly the saviors of the Jews, the one who said they created a place to be a safe haven because the Jews are being discriminated against, saving us from the hands of the Muslims, while in fact, if anybody knows the history, which I'll just mention a little later, with God's help, the history is that we've been living amongst Muslim countries, and they have been the true safe haven for Jews for hundreds and hundreds of years, by the Inquisition, by the Crusaders, even by World War II. The Jews went to Algeria, went to Turkey, and they were able to live there, and there were no human rights groups, there was no United Nations to watch over them. So this is how a person can be told and buys facts, and what he believes is facts, and ingrained in stone, and he believes that the fact is that these Muslims are the enemies of the Jews and the Zionists are the saviors of the Jews. So before I start, just to understand, this is what Chaim Weizmann, who maybe had the opportunity to save Jews because they were a very wealthy organization, and this is what they said: they don't want to help the Jews. They don't want to help the Jews. It's unbelievable. And they want them, and they were actually, there's whole writings about the fact what they did to thwart the efforts of saving the Jews. The Hungarian Jews, we directly attribute to the fact that the Hungarian Jews, as I say, were killed in 1944, 1945, and they were able, our rabbis who created actually communities in New York, it's called Mount Kisco, it's Nitra, it's named after a town in Hungary. Rabbi Weiss, of blessed memory, approached Eichmann, and there was a trials even later in Israel about that, and where they uncovered the fact. And Rabbi Weissman spoke about this earlier, that he made a deal with Eichmann to buy, being that the Germans were desperate for money, he wanted to buy off the Jews from them, and he made that agreement that they would stop killing the Jews in the concentration camps, and they stopped killing for like a month's time in Auschwitz. But the Zionists thwarted the efforts of Rabbi Weissmandl, so that at the end they continued killing. He wrote a book about this. So they were directly involved in the issue of the Holocaust and many things. They wanted to use the Holocaust. They wrote, "Rak b'dam niknaretz." Only through blood will we get the land. In other words, we'll be able to buy sympathy. If more Jewish blood is spilled, we will be able to gain the sympathy of the European countries, and they were the ones who had the ear of the leadership of Europe. They were the ones who got England to agree to the White Papers, to the Balfour Declaration, to give them land. This was Chaim Weiss, the one who did this. It's very complicated. Maybe I'm getting off the issue, so I don't want, but it just happens to be, well, the issue of Holocaust is very complicated. We know that Jews were killed, but we don't use that, and we're not interested, we don't care the amount, if it's how many millions or what. It's not any difference to us because we don't use it to manipulate others, to oppress others. It's a fact that we have to just use that to remind ourselves to be closer to God, and that is the way the Jewish person should be. And what the Zionists are doing, that is what the problem is. The Zionists are using the murder, the death of Jews for their purpose, and these people happen to be fraud because they were the ones who didn't want to save the Jews. They didn't want the religious Jews to be saved. Okay, let me just now get to the point. What is Zionism? Why do we have this conflict with Zionism and with this movement? What is going on here? Why isn't Judaism and Zionism the same? I mean, it seems really mind-boggling. You see, around the world, the more religious a person is, the more he is understood to be a staunch, ardent supporter of Zionism. Not only a supporter, but he is a Zionist, matter of factly, because he's more Jewish. The more Jewish, the more Zionist. And here we're coming, some rabbis, and claiming, no, we're totally anti-Zionist. What is wrong with this picture? What's going on? I'm sure it's incomprehensible. So with God's help, let me just try to explain in very concise terms. There's a few issues here. Judaism is a religion, a spirituality to serve God. Nothing more and nothing less. It is a bond that we made with God, that we believe that the person is the soul is ensconced in the body of a person. We are here. A person's sole purpose in this world is to elevate his materialism, to use his body and soul to glorify God, and that is the whole sole purpose of a person on this world, to elevate materialism, to bring it to spirituality. And that is what Judaism is, a bond that the Jewish people made with God to uphold the Torah. Every human being will inherit the world to come. Every human being has to serve God, and if he is a righteous person, he believes God gave the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai and commanded that thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, idol worshipry, believe in one God, you will inherit the world to come. That's what the prophets say. Elijah the prophet, it's written in all our law books. This is a fact. Judaism was just a bond that says, "V'atem tiyu mamlechas kehanim v'goy kadosh." It says in the Bible that God said, in the Old Testament, that God said to the Jewish people, you should be, "Atem tiyu mamlechas kehanim," you should be a nation of priests and a holy nation. That we had to accept the priesthood. That means to do many, many commandments. And that way, we have to be an example for people of how one should, to emulate God. Just as God is compassionate, we must be compassionate. We try to emulate God to be constantly in the service of God. That is what Judaism is. When God, anything else is not Judaism. What Zionism came and did around 100 years ago by Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, and his cohorts, these were people who were estranged from spirituality, estranged from serving God. They abhorred religion. They were totally materialistic. They were sinners. They were people who, instead of sanctifying the day of the Sabbath, they desecrated the day of the Sabbath. Everything, they threw away everything that had to do with God. And therefore, they wanted to transform Judaism from a spirituality, a religion, into a materialism. And what should Judaism become? It should become a political issue, a goal to have a piece of land, a state, a nation amongst nations, a strong military. They should be able to have a strong Olympic team. They should be able to show that they're not any backward than any other country on the world. And totally disassociating itself from anything with religion. They may allow religion because they're a proud country. They have to prove they're democratic. They will allow other people to do what they want, if it doesn't hamper what they're trying to reach, the goals they're trying to reach. But only if it doesn't hamper. As you see, Chaim Weiss said, we don't want them pouring into Tel Aviv. because that would hamper what they're trying to reach. But they may allow it. They'll have for window dressing. They'll have a court system that has nothing to do with the Torah. We have thousands of years. God gave us a Torah, which is a court system, a law book. When people have a conflict, they have to go to the rabbinical authorities, the God-given Torah, to come to resolve the conflict. What did the Zionists do? They made a whole other court system. They hanged the Malkein Dovid, the Star of David, and they call it the Jewish state. And then they take the Torah that God gave to the Jews and they put it on the side and they made a whole other court system. But they have to convince you that it's God's land and it's God's country, it's a Jewish state. So they use, for window dressing, they have a rabbinate and a chief rabbi and a rabbinate. It's one thing, it's a farce. The whole issue is a farce. But they use it very cleverly, because they must use Judaism in order to legitimize this political movement. Why should they take this land? Let us understand what's wrong with having this piece of land. Besides the fact that it's a transformation, it's a crime. It's the greatest crime because it's usurping, it's stealing a religion from people. It's usurping Judaism and trying to convert it into a materialism, into a democracy, so let it be called, which it isn't. But they're trying. And in other words, they didn't just want to translate it in the dictionary. They want to uproot Judaism, the religion, from every Jewish person, from the Jewish youth, the gullible and the ones who are just starting to grow and learn. They want them to totally strive for something totally, instead of spirituality, instead of for godliness, to strive for a political issue, for a piece of land. This is what they're trying to do, totally uproot Judaism from people. That, by us, is the worst tragedy. But they have other issues here. The fact is that when God gave us the land of Israel in the Torah, He clearly stated that He's giving us to practice this priesthood, that in order to practice Judaism, to serve God, He's giving us the land. And He stipulated that if we are not on the level that is required of this holiness, then we will be rejected from the land. The land itself will reject us, as it has the Canaanites before, because we are defiling the land. This is a fact, and the Torah, and it's clearly the books of the prophets speaks about how they warned of Jeremiah, Ezekiel. I'm sure you were all well read in the books of the prophets, how the prophets warned the Jews that they're going to be sent out of the land. And they were eventually sent out of the land because they didn't uphold this stipulation that God gave to the Jews. When they were sent into exile, God put the Jewish people under 3 oaths. He said that we must be loyal to every country. We in the United States have to be loyal citizens to the United States. In Iran, they have to be loyal citizens to Iran. In any country, in Canada, wherever you go, a Jew is required to be loyal, and he's forbidden to rebel. We are forbidden to rebel against a nation, any nation. In Palestine, they must be loyal to the Palestinian people. The second issue is that we are forbidden to go back en masse to the land of Israel. We were displaced. We were thrown out of the land by God. We were thrown out. We were exiled because we were not on that high level that was required. So therefore, God warned us, we are forbidden to go back en masse. The third thing is we are forbidden to make any attempts to end exile. This is oaths of God, and it's a cardinal sin to breach these oaths. The Jewish people accepted that. Zionism, when they decided to make the state of Israel, when they decided to convert Judaism into a political issue, into a materialism, they decided that they first wanted to go to Uganda and other lands, but they saw that they won't have the backing of the Jews and the non-Jews. So they turned to Palestine, because the Jew, ultimately, we dream that the greatest glorification of God is we have to serve God and try to serve God as best of our ability. But the greatest glorification will be when the God we pray for every day, and this is the Jewish prayers through all the 2,000 years of our existence, we pray for a day when God will make a metaphysical change in the world. It won't be through any human intervention. God will make a metaphysical change where all humanity will serve God together in peace and harmony. That is what we pray for. That was the yearning of every Jew. So they took this, but not through physical means. We will not force it. It will be just a change in the world where all humanity will throw down the swords. It says, as it says by the wall, of Isaiah wall, opposite the UN, that they will beat the swords into plowshares. This is what the wolf will reign with the sheep. This is what the hope of a Jew. But they're using all these issues of the Torah, and they're trying to sell this, that this is what they're doing. They call themselves the beginning of redemption. So in other words, they're taking all the concepts of the Torah of spirituality, and they're waving the Bible and saying, oh, they take the Star of David, oh, with the Jewish state, this is what God gave to us, therefore they decided to take Palestine. Because any other land, they wouldn't be able to sell this to the Jews. And also the non-Jews. They got this, as you know, the evangelistic Christians, they're also supporting, because that's what it says in the Bible. But they didn't read it well enough into the Bible. Read it. Look to the Jewish people who are studying it, the people who studied it all their lives. We are clearly known that we are, that we know that we are forbidden, that we were sent out. Yes, we were given the land, but we were clearly, because of our sins, we were put into exile. And we are forbidden to go back en masse. We are forbidden to rebel against any nation. So this whole concept of Zionism, Zionism means Zion, which means Jerusalem, going back, taking that land, is totally forbidden to us. It's forbidden, and we were warned by the prophets that it will bring catastrophic results. It won't be a safe haven. It will be on and on bloodshed, as we find that for 50 years, it says if you will go against the words of God, you won't be successful. For over 50 years, whether it's the doves or the hawks, they're never successful. Now, this would be if the land wouldn't have been a land that was inhabited. Because it's forbidden for Jews to do it, even if it was given to them, and it would have been uninhabited land. But being that the fact is that it was inhabited by the Palestinian people, the Muslims and the Christians, who were the vast majority of the land, so now we have another issue. The Torah and the Bible, it says that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. They're breaching every law of the Torah. They're oppressing the people, subjugating them, sending them out. This is all forbidden to us. So every facet of Zionism is forbidden, and all they're doing is they're pulling the wool over your eyes. It's a con. The whole thing is fooling the people. That's all they're doing. And they're able to intimidate you by using the Holocaust, and anybody who stands up against them is called anti-Semitic. And that is the way they're able to do it, because people say, and my good friend here said that he doesn't want to say the Jewish, he can't separate the two, but you fall into that trap when you call it the Jewish state, and you say the Jews, because they want you to be then able to turn to you and say, you're an anti-Semite. That's why they call it the Jewish state. By the David of Camp David, they insisted they write the state of Israel, not the state of Israel, the Jewish state, because they want you to confuse the two and say that we have a religious conflict. It's not a religious conflict. We are thankful to the Muslims for the hundreds of years that they've been for us to say faith, and we can't even express our thanks. We know in the really religious community, we know in the religious communities how the Muslims brought to us. We are tremendously thankful, and it's not a religious conflict. It's been the same religion. The Islam and Judaism has been the same for hundreds and hundreds of years. What happened that for the last 100 years we can't coexist? Purely because of this new movement called Zionism. It's nothing to do with religion, but they want you to be confused, and they want it to be called anti-Semites. So we have to be clear in condemnation and say, yes, no, anti-Semitic is a terrible thing. But anti-Zionism, yes, be proud of it. And it should not be a state of Israel. It's totally illegitimate. It is a flawed political state. And just like when people understand black and white, they understood by the South Africa that it's apartheid. They understood it's bad because it's racism. That is what the state of Israel, not the West Bank and not Gaza, but returning the whole Palestine to the rightful owners, to the self-rule of the Palestinians. And then we could do God's will. That will bring the true peace, and we can coexist. In order to be able to give a remedy for a sickness, you have to know what the sickness is. We have to clarify for the world by constantly advertising and letting people know the personal tales of how we coexisted and the communities how we coexisted. Put in a lot of advertisements, because they'll never put it in the papers like this. And let the world waken up. There should be a grassroots movement to educate people that it's not a religious conflict, it's a purely flawed, evil political state of Israel, Zionist state that's totally against the will of God, and what people call against human rights, which is godly rights. That is what it is. Clearly, call it what it is. This is what we have, and there's more on our site, www.nkusa.org.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to very quickly advance the DVD so we can hear the response from Mark Glenn to what the rabbi had said. Mark Glenn does not buy the notion that Judaism and Zionism are two different things. Mark believes that Zionism and Judaism is one and the same, and of course, he has his own reasoning to believe that. And just let me know when it's done. We only have like 4 minutes left, so just go ahead and start it as soon as you have it on that particular portion. And I wish we had more time.
Trying to speak the truth as best as we know it. Okay. I cannot, as a man who tries to live a moral life and who claims to be a Christian, I cannot sit here and not remark on what we heard being said by our friends over at Neturei Karta. Okay? This is a free speech conference. Keep this in mind. And so I certainly don't want to disinvite myself from coming back if there is indeed a conference next year. But nevertheless, there are some things that we have to get straightened out. Anyone trying to sell the item to you, that there is this vast, uncrossable chasm between Judaism and Zionism, is not telling you the truth. I'm sorry, Rabbi. And I'm sorry to my friend Hesham. Judaism has not been hijacked. Judaism is doing today exactly what it is programmed to do. Anybody who studies their Gospels and who reads about the conflict that existed between this man named Jesus of Nazareth and the rabbis knows that what we see taking place today is just a replay of what took place 2,000 years ago, but which did not get finished. We can talk about the Torah this and the Torah that, but anybody who has studied this creature knows that the lifeblood of modern-day Judaism is this book known as the Talmud, which I noticed that you did not mention when you were talking in your speech about the Talmud. Anybody who has studied the Talmud, and we have it from very good sources, from people who managed to escape from this concentration camp mentality known as Judaism. Men like Israel Shahak, Mordecai Vanunu, Israel Shamir. Men who came out from this prison mentality and said, you people out there, you Christians who think that the lion is going to lay down with the lamb and that they're going to get along, you're just kidding yourself. The Talmud is your mortal enemy. Jesus told us you cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. You cannot take Jesus' liberating message of compassion and justice and freedom and mix it with the old, bitter wineskin of Judaism. This was why they killed him. And literally, from the moment in which he opened his mouth, this wasn't something that was building up over many years. When he walked into the synagogue and opened the scrolls and read from the book of Isaiah and said, I have come to release the oppressed, to bring sight to the blind, and to liberate those who have been held prisoner. They drove him to the end of town and tried to throw him over a cliff. Now, I am saying this because as Christians, as citizens We have gotten ourselves into this mess because we were not paying attention. When these gangs...
This week in history.